Alright, in this lecture, we're going to be going over how to create a reflective texture. So what exactly is a reflective texture? Well, the texture of a reflective surface is just a very smooth, glossy surface. So if something is really rough, it's going to be less reflective, and a really good example of something that's highly reflective and very smooth is a mirror in your bathroom. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to draw is we're going to draw a sphere that is reflective. Now this isn't going to be reflective like a mirror, but it's going to be reflective enough that it looks glossy. So the first thing you need to understand is that a reflection is just a copy of everything around it being projected onto your object. So with this sphere, for example, it's going to be reflecting anything that's pointing directly at it. So the first thing we're going to take into account is that it's sitting on a white surface. That means it's going to be getting a light reflection onto the bottom of our bowl. Then our horizon line is going to be dark, and as it moves up, it's going to turn into a lighter gradient. So let's go ahead and get started so I can show you what I mean. So first off, I'm going to add in my horizon line like so. And next, I'm going to go ahead and start adding in my reflections. So starting with the darker area, and this isn't going to be a completely reflective bowl. It's going to have some really microscopic rough areas, and so that's going to allow us to make this more of a hazed reflection rather than a really sharp, perfect reflection. So we're adding in this dark area right here that's going to slowly transition into a lighter value, because that's what it's going to be reflecting back here where we have our background. Our background is going to start out darker, and it's slowly going to transition into a lighter color. So we'll have that nice gradient background. And for now, I'm just going to rough this in, and we'll add in a lot more detail, make it look more realistic here in the next little while. But for now, we just want to rough it in so you start to get the idea of what I'm doing. And then our floor, or our area that the bowl is sitting on, is going to be white, which is why we're getting this white reflection on the bottom of our bowl. So now let's go ahead and get started with adding in some real value. So I'm going to start off with this middle area, and so I'm going to add in a really dark value, and this isn't necessarily a shadow. This isn't our core shadow. This is a reflection of this background area that's surrounding our bowl. And then I'm going to slowly change that into the next lighter value. So we're going to start creating that nice gradient from one dark value to a lighter value as we move up our sphere. Now as we get up more here to the top, let's say that we have a light source right here in front of it and it's a lamp, okay? So that means that we're gonna see that reflection on our glossy bowl. So let's go ahead and create a shape like so, maybe a little bit smaller, like so. And we're gonna leave that area out white because that's where our light source is going to be coming from. So I'm gonna go ahead and erase away the edges so it's not so dark. And then we can go ahead and start adding in our value right up to that point. Then we can start darkening this in more. And the darker, the better. The more contrast, the more it's going to look like it's reflecting. All right, great. Now let's go ahead and move down to this bottom area. So I'm going to start off by lightly adding a darker coat or a darker value on top of this white area, because as it reflects onto this bowl, it might be diluted by the color of the bowl. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add my cast shadow in. Now my cast shadow is actually not going to be a very hard edge, and it's going to be behind it. So it's going to come back behind it like so, rather than to the side of it. And then I can go ahead and begin to darken that. Like I said, I want it to be really soft, so we're going to have a nice gradual change from one value to our white value of our surface. All right, great. Now, since this ball is reflecting our bottom surface, that means it's also going to be reflecting the shadow. So we can add this shadow into the reflection on our ball. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that shadow all the way up to this edge, like so on our ball. Same with this side. And then I can go ahead and begin to blend that in. Perfect. Now really quick, I'm going to go ahead and come back up here into this top area, and I'm going to darken this just a little bit more so it stands out more and creates more of an illusion of reflection. Alright, now let's go ahead and move on to our background area. So our background needs to match this area. It can be a little bit lighter, because remember, this ball is going to be a little bit darker with a glossy coat over it, so that means it's going to cause everything on it to be a little bit darker. So such as this white area that's reflecting the white surface, it's a little bit darker than the actual white surface because of the fact that the ball is a darker color. So let's go ahead and start adding in that gradient background. So I'm starting with the darkest color, which is this color right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and slowly fade into my next lightest color. And I'm just going to do that all the way up, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in a box around my drawing so it becomes a better composition. Great. So now we've drawn a reflective texture, which let's go over it again real quick what a reflective texture is. It's just a very smooth surface with a glossy coating on it that allows it to reflect the world around it. So basically all the reflection is it's the objects surrounding it that are being projected onto your object. So right here we have the bottom surface, which is this white area, which is the surface the ball is sitting on. And then we have this black area on our ball, which is just the reflection of this background area that slowly turns into a lighter gray, which is a gradient, which we also see on our ball here. And then this lighter area right here is our light source. Now let's look at an example of a highly reflective piece of artwork. So in this example, this is created by M.C. Escher. He's a very famous artist, and he created this drawing by creating a sphere that was highly reflective, exactly like a mirror. So you can see here that everything around the sphere is being reflected right onto the sphere and being projected onto it, and also being warped into the shape of the sphere. That's another thing to understand about reflection, is that when it's being projected onto an object, it's being warped into the shape of that object. So how could we do something like this ourselves? Well, let's give it a shot. So first off, what we need to understand is that the sphere can be broken up into a grid system, which is sort of like a perspective system for linear perspective. But basically, if we have our ball right here, the middle line in it is going to be completely straight. Then if we come all the way to this edge, this is the most curve our line is ever going to be, is on that edge. Same with this edge. And then we can find in the middle a line that is about the middle of the curvature of this straight line and this curved line. So it's probably going to be somewhere about there. And then we can find one in the middle of each one of these sections. So the next one is probably going to be about there. And then we can get this section right here. And so as it gets to the edge of our ball, you'll see how it becomes more and more curved. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. So we're just going to try to copy exactly what we see here. And we should start with the middle line and then work our way from section to section. But I've already started from the inner side, so that's fine. So now our ball has been broken up into sections, and we've added that curved perspective in there. Now we also need to do it in the other direction. So if we turn our paper like so, we can go ahead and do the same thing. So we'll draw a line like so, and then we're going to go ahead and draw on both sides of this like we did before. All right, great. So what this grid system is it's basically a normal grid system that's sitting in front of it, but it's being projected or reflected onto our actual ball. And so when we draw an image onto our ball, we need it to warp to this perspective. So let's go ahead and try this. So if we go ahead and draw another sphere right here, and then in this example, we're going to draw the reflection of a room, kind of like in MC Escher's drawing. So first off, we need to keep in mind where each one of our grid system lines are. And so we can lightly sketch in some guidelines in there, but we don't want to sketch them all in because we don't want it to interfere with our drawing, but maybe one right there in the middle between our straight line and our outer curved line. And then we'll do the same thing going in the other direction. And these will just help us guide our lines. So let's start off by creating a counter. So let's say there's a counter right here, like so. And then that counter is going to curve along with this line right here, all the way to that edge. And then we can go ahead and add in another thing over here. So let's try adding in a table. So our table is going to be a little bit taller, and it's going to curve all the way out to that point right there. And then we can add in a leg, and the leg needs to curve with this line right here. So we'll go ahead and add that in like so. Then let's go ahead and add some walls to our room. So I'm going to go ahead and add a wall right here, and I need to follow this perspective. So I'm trying to follow that line there. And then I'll go ahead and add in a line for my back wall, which will be a little bit curved along with these lines. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in this back wall over here, and then add in a roof, like so. And then I need to add in a window. So my window also needs to curve with my perspective. And I can go ahead and draw my window lines like so. And those actually need to be a little bit more curved too. All right, perfect. Now let's go ahead and add something else in there. Like let's say we wanted to add a refrigerator. Well, we can go ahead and add that refrigerator in. And we just need to make sure we follow these curved perspective lines. So there's a refrigerator, and it comes back to the wall like so. And then we can break that up into two different areas. So we have our freezer and our fridge area of that refrigerator. And we can also add handles onto that. And then let's add one more thing. Let's add a rug in there. So if we add our rug in right here, we just need to make sure that it follows the curve of our ball. And then I need to add a ledge to my counter also, like so. And then I can go ahead and darken in these edges of my ball. And then I can go ahead and also add in some light and shadow into my drawing. So for example, on this side of my counter, that might be my core shadow side. And then this might be my highlight side. And then this also might be my highlight side. So this other edge of my table leg is going to get the shadow. And then we also might make this tabletop a darker value altogether. like so. And same with our rug. Our rug might be a darker value. And then our walls might be a darker value too. So this side might be a lighter wall. And then this middle one might be a darker wall. And that'll be nice too, because that'll create a focal point in our reflection, which will be this window, because that's where we're creating the most contrast. Then we'll go ahead and add a shadow to this side also, like so. And then we can go ahead and add in a little bit of a darker edge along this sphere. And we might even add a picture frame on the wall here, keeping with the curvature of our perspective. Maybe another picture frame over here, maybe even a second one. And the second one is going to get squished a little bit as it curves around the edge of our bowl. And then we can go ahead and add in a shadow too if we wanted to, just to make it look like it's grounded. Alright, but that's the basic idea of making a really highly reflective sphere. So when you're adding a highly reflective texture to an object, you need to imagine that the surroundings around it are being projected onto that object, but also they're being warped to the shape of that object. I know it can be a little bit complicated and it'll take a lot of practice and a lot of studying to understand how this works, but for now, this should be enough information to get you by with creating reflective textures. Thanks for watching this lecture, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next one.